Shalom, shalom. Before I get started with this lesson, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and infinite glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rahak Wadash. Give a double honors unto the head apostles of Great Millstone, who do rule well and teach well with sound doctrine, shalom, unto the elders and the elder bishops of Great Millstone as well, shalom, shalom. Peace, love, salutations, and blessings unto the hopeful elect, the men, women, and children listening and learning from the servants and prophets of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, and a hearty shalom to the sincere brethren doing the work in truth and sincerity, spread across the four winds of the earth, giving diligence to make their calling and election sure. Shalom, shalom. So this lesson is going to go into, the people who are on the face of your money. Like the scriptures say, inquisition shall be made into the counsels of the ungodly. And inquisition goes into a courtroom-like setting where heavy questioning is done, an investigation. And in a criminal investigation, criminal goes back to the word crimson, which goes back to red. Red is Adawam in Hebrew, which, is the color of Esau, Edom, the criminal. In a criminal investigation, especially like a federal one, one of the phrases used by the FBI and, other like agencies is follow the money. So that's what we're going to do. In this lesson, we're going to go into the money and the people who are on the money and their bloody past to show you, that this is the wicked. Lord's will, this lesson's edifying. And we'll start out with the book of Jeremiah, the 10th chapter, verses 1 and 2, and we'll go from there. This is Jeremiah 10 and 1, and it reads, Hear ye the word which the Lord Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. Now this chapter, as far as Jeremiah the 10th chapter, verses 1 through about 5, goes into Christmas. It even goes into the hanging up of the Christmas tree and the decking of the Christmas tree with silver and gold ornaments. One cut at the tree from the forest. But you can also apply this to the other abominable holidays, and practices that go on in Babylon the Great. July 4th. Fireworks, which go back to Rome. New Year's, which people like to bring in with abominable dishes, black eyed peas and ham hocks and whatnot, man. Christmas, which goes back to Saturnalia. Thanksgiving, which is a celebration of the slaughter of the so-called Native American and Seminole Indians. And we're going to go into some of that history, Andrew Jackson, so on and so forth. So Lord's will, this lesson's edifying. Once again, we'll start out with this article that came out. And this article came out at 2 a.m. last night. It was pretty interesting when I was looking up information about, 4th of July. So this is a pretty interesting read. I'll start out with like the first 4 paragraphs and we'll go, from there. And this is from Frederick Douglass, who had a lot of friends who were a part of the, Masonic Brotherhood, but I couldn't find any information on him specifically being a Mason, And a lot of people who are influential as far as Judah, I'm talking about specifically in this case, were part of the, Masonic Brotherhood, Martin Luther King, Jesse Jackass, and so on and so forth. So this article starts out, editor's note, nearly 24 states, and this came out from NevadaCurrent.com. Nearly 24 states, Nevada is one of them, have passed laws designed to limit discussion of the role of race while teaching United States history in public schools and colleges, often prohibiting quote-unquote divisive concepts. The laws are pushed by politicians on the right to combat what they wrongly usually contend is critical race theory. And this is the scriptures coming to life of the children complaining of an ungodly father. Let's get that real quick. And this may be a little bit on the long-winded side, but Lord's will, it's informative because a lot of information is going to, pop on your screen. Let's go to Sirach, the 43rd chapter. Come on. I think it's about 4, maybe 41. Yeah, 41. Slack it. Sirach 41. Yep. Slack it. Come on. Let's lock it from my cell phone and the reception speed. This is Sirach 41:7. And it reads, the children will complain of an ungodly father, their ungodly forefathers, which when critical race theory, quote unquote, is taught, that's what these Edomites are getting in an uproar about, And in Florida, they just, have some law in the books. I don't know if it's passed or not, to where, they can sue, if a parent finds out that a child is being taught critical race theory and, becomes offended, Some along those lines. Sirach 41:7, the children will complain of an ungodly father because they shall be reproached for his sake. It's going to reproached. Rebuked, addressed in such a way as to express disapproval or disappointment. And that's what's happening, It's being found out that these people are the wicked. Back to the article. Wrongly, the laws are pushed by politicians on the right to combat what they wrongly usually contend is critical race theory. Below are excerpts from a speech delivered by Frederick Douglass in Rochester, New York, July 5th, 1852. And the header of the article reads, "What to the slave is 4th of July?" And the only thing free, about you so-called Negroes, on July 4th, 1776, was your labor, and you so-called Hispanic tribes, and you so-called Native Americans and Seminole Indians, your land and your labor, because some of you were enslaved as well, The scriptures say the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. Jeremiah 50:33, we'll get that a little later. So we're going to go into this speech that he made in 1852. So it says, fellow citizens, pardon me, allow me to ask why I'm called upon to speak here today. What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? And let's get a quick scripture. Baruch 3:8, because we're still in captivity. These people's faces are on the money. We're going to go into the brutal history of some of these guys' faces who are on the money. George Washington, Ulysses S. Grant, Thomas Jefferson, Baruch 3:8, behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahshua our power. And we're still in that captivity. Still in captivity, better yet. Being subject to payments, paying tribute to the modern day Roman Empire through the IRS, which is a private owned corporation owned by the elites, owned by the Rothschilds, going back to Red Shield. Back to the article. What have I, or those I represent, to do with their national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? Because if it was, he wouldn't be writing this speech. And am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessing resulting from your independence to us, you know? What to God, both for your sakes and ours, that an affirmative answer could be truthfully returned to these questions. That would my task be light and my burden easy and delightful. And Silakia, this is his words, not mine. And, this is old English that he's using. This is in the 1800s. But such is not the state of the case. I say it with a sad sense of disparity between us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessing in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. That goes to them getting the fatness of the earth, for a limited time and for a limited season, them being the head and us being the tail. But that's starting to, come to an end as far as their rulership, their eon, their age. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers. I'm curious. Bequeathed. Okay. Handed down by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. Once again, the only thing free about, you so-called Negroes, West Indians and Haitians who are living in Babylon the Great was your labor, My subject then, fellow citizen, is American slavery, and when America celebrated its independence, July 4th, 1776, the Southern Kingdom was in slavery, man. And what do you celebrate 4th of July with? Abominable foods, barbecue ribs in the grill, pork, which goes back to Greek, which goes back to the Greek Empire, which goes back to Greece. I shall see this day fireworks, which go back to Rome. Proving that this is Greco-Rome 2.0. A couple of clues. I shall see this day and its popular characteristics from the slave's point of view, standing there identified with the American bondman, making his wrongs mine. I do not hesitate to declare with all my soul that the character and conduct of this nation never looked blacker to me than on this 4th of July. Whether we turn to the declaration of the past or to profess the present conduct of the nation seems equally hideous and revolting. America is false to the past, false to the present, and solemnly blinds herself to be false to the future. And that's a true statement. Standing with the Most High and the crushed and bleeding slave on this occasion, I will, in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon. He was going in, because this nation says it was founded on, quote unquote Christian principles, but it does everything, against the scriptures as far as, when it institutes laws, This is Isaiah 29:16. And I'm just getting this bit of information to build up the lesson. This is Isaiah 29:16. Come on, phone. And it reads, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of him that made it, he made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of him that framed it, he hath no understanding? And the scriptures also say, woe to him that call a good evil and evil good. That's also them turning things upside down, celebrating the nasty people, pushing the abominable foods, abominable lifestyles, Jesus Christos, exalting women. Slucky. Getting these incenses burning. All right. Let's go back to that article. So I'm going to go back to the point where I was at right here. It says, I will in the name of humanity, which is outraged, in the name of liberty, which is fettered, in the name of Constitution and the Bible, which are disregarded and trampled upon, dare to call in question and to denounce with all the emphasis I can, command everything that serves to perpetuate slavery, the great sin and shame of America. I will not equivocate. Yep. Conceal to avoid telling the truth, So I will not conceal, avoid telling the truth. He's basically, I'm going to keep it real. I will not excuse. I will not use the severest language I can. I will use the severest language I can, command, and yet not one word shall escape me that any man whose judgment is not blinded by prejudice, or who can not at heart a slaveholder shall not confess to be right and just. So he was going in, Now let's go to Deuteronomy 28 and 48. And it reads, therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. You want to pay your rent, who you pay? A company that's most likely owned by Amalek, as far as the mortgage company or the management bureau of the apartments. Who owns those apartments? At the very top tier, Amalek, man. The house of Esau, Edom, the tabernacles of Edom. Starting with the elite bankers. Deuteronomy 28 and 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies, which the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And this didn't happen to those Amalekites over there, in the Holy Land, man. This happened to Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, Also remnants of Gad and remnants of Reuben. They tried to enslave the natives first, and it didn't work. So they doubled back and went and came and got us. Speaking of the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi from the shores of West Africa, Now, if you go into George Washington, who's on the $1 bill, he became a slave owner at the early age of 11. So George Washington was a slave owner. When his father died and left him the 280 acre farm near Fredericksburg, Virginia, where the family was then living. In addition, Washington, it says, was wild 10 slaves. So he owned tons of slaves. We're going to go into that. George Washington, his teeth yanked from slaves' mouths. And this came out. I'll try to leave a link to every single one of these articles. So if a brother wants to, do a lesson on any of this information that comes out, and, the long-winded lesson that I feel is going to be long-winded, feel free to do so. But Lord's will, it's informative. So George Washington's teeth yanked from slaves' mouths. So I'm writing this week. Let's get right to the point. However, the point of my article is not so much him. Let's start with the top. I'm writing this week's article about George Washington because President's Day this year is celebrated February 17th, and this came out 2020. However, the focus of my article is not so much him, but his teeth. Correction, my enslaved ancestors' teeth. Let's start with your pertinent background info. President's Day is officially called George Washington's birthday. Wow. According to federal legislation created in 1885, I didn't even know that, to honor the man born in 288 years ago on February 22nd, 1732. This is the same man who enslaved 316 black human beings at his Mount Vernon, Virginia plantation, who transported 9 of them beginning in 1790 to America's first White House, located right here in Philly at 6th and Market Street. And this came out from the Philadelphia Tribune. It says, let's now proceed to the teeth. In 1784, Washington had some teeth from enslaved black adults transplanted, quote unquote, into his mouth. You want proof? Read An Imperfect God, George Washington, His Slaves, and the Creation of America, written by award-winning author, historian, and Library of Virginia Board of Trustees member Henry Wynick. Slakia. 5 years later, in 1789, a dentist in Philadelphia made Washington's first set of total dentures from teeth that were yanked from the heads of his slaves, who he had hundreds of. You want more proof? Read George Washington's Teeth, an unconventional guide to the 18th century, written by award-winning author, cultural historian, professor, American Historical Association president, Harvard University Library director, and New York Public Library Board of Trustees member Robert Darnton. Let's go into Zechariah 11:4. And it reads, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahshai, my power, feed the flock of the slaughter. My people are led as the flock of the slaughter. In the book of 2nd Ezra, that's talking about you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. I'm going to start again from Zechariah 11:4. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahshai, my power, feed the flock of the slaughter, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahshai, for I am rich. But what does the scripture say in the law? We're going to get to that. He that stealeth the man and selleth him, if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. That's what the law says, man. Exodus 21:16. And we're still in this man's hands. Zechariah 11:5 again from the top. Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord, for I am rich. And that's George Washington's mentality when he was yanking the teeth out of his slaves' mouths and putting them in his mouth, for dentures, man. I'm rich. I can do this. Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not. But through the mercy and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahshai, the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahshai has sent back shepherds, which will feed you with knowledge and understanding, and comfort you with the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahshai. Let's go into Benjamin Franklin, who's on the $100 bill. So Benjamin Franklin did not speak out against slavery until, later on in his life. But as a young man, he owned slaves, and he carried advertisements for the sale of slaves in his newspaper, the Pennsylvania Gazette. Let's go to the $50 bill. We're just following the money. and the people on the money. You know, the $50 bill has Ulysses S. Grant, you know, the general of the not the Confederate Army, the Union Army, you know, during the Civil War. Now, if you go into Ulysses S. Grant, he was a slave owner too. The former enslaved household of the Grant family. Salakia, come on. Now my computer, no, my cell phone, Salakia, mini computer, is tripping. No, I'm not subscribing. Salakia, they want me to subscribe to their newsletter. It says the formerly enslaved household of the Grant family. Women are often overlooked in the history of their role in the institution of slavery. First Lady Julia Dent Grant, wife of President Ulysses S. Grant, was a steadfast slave mistress for more than half of her life, and often forgetting part of her identity. Though Grant himself grew up in a quote-unquote abolitionist family in the North, in the free state of Ohio, his marriage to Julia Dent led him to become Slakia, involved in slavery, while the two lived in Missouri on Julia's family estate. As a result, Ulysses S. Grant was the last U.S. president to have owned an enslaved individual. Grant's legacy as the respected commanding general of the Union Army and his efforts as president to protect black citizenship, quote unquote, have long obscured his personal slave ownership. You know, so he owned slaves. Let's go to Exodus 21:16. And he that stealeth a man and won't be stolen. It was a part of biblical prophecy that this had to happen. But what's the reward for Esau Edom? Well, you're going to get rounded up and you're going to get sold yourselves, man. You know? It says that in the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter. Let's get all the meat off the bone this lesson. Joel 3. Let's get right to the point. Yep. This is Joel 3:8. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, the heathens, to a people far off, for the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai had spoken it. You know? It's like it. We're going to sell the Edomites to each other, you know? And we're going to have taskmasters over the Edomites. Salakia. Just want to correct my statement. Joel 3:8. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai had spoken it. You know? So we're going to have possession of the heathen. You know? It says that in the book of Psalms. You know, Joel, Joel, the 3rd chapter confirms it, but the book of Psalms, the 2nd chapter and the 8th verse, you know, ask of me and I will give you the heathen for thine inheritance. So we're going to be selling the Edomites to each other. Salakia, once again, Exodus 21:16. And he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. He shall surely be put to death. That's what the law says, man. Just go into the $10 bill. So on the $10 bill, you have Alexander Hamilton, who was the first U.S. Secretary of Treasury, and also he's known as one of the founding fathers, you know, quote unquote. Now, if you go into Alexander Hamilton, he was also a slave owner. So that's people on, you know, the $1 bill, the $10 bill, the $20 bill, and the $50 bill, and the $100 bill, all slave owners. Let's keep it going. We're following the money, you know. So this is from the Smithsonian mag.com as of November 10th, 2020. And it reads, new research suggests Alexander Hamilton was a slave owner, often portrayed as an abolitionist, somebody who's against slavery, quote unquote, Hamilton may have enslaved people in his own household. We're going to go into this. So as for Jesse Sir Philippi, it was an eye-opening moment when she worked at her computer. She had to keep checking to make sure what she was seeing was real, irrefutable, and evidence that Alexander Hamilton, who's in the $10 bill, the founding father depicted by many historians, even on Broadway, as an abolitionist, enslaved other humans. I went over that thing so many times, I just had to be sure, recalls Sir Philippi, adding, I went into this to the intention of learning about Hamilton's connection to slavery, where I would find instances of him enslaving people. I did. In a recent published paper, as odious and immoral a thing, Alexander Hamilton's hidden history as an enslaver, the young researcher details her findings gleaned from primary source materials. One of those documents includes Hamilton's own cash book, which is available online at the Library of Congress. In it, several line items indicate Hamilton purchased enslaved labor for his own household. Basically, enslaved labor means you purchased and owned slaves. That's just Esau Edom's way of nicely putting things with neat words. Because you can't buy the labor without buying the slave. There's no such thing as slave rentals. You own the slave. When you own the slave, you own that labor. In it, several line items indicate that Hamilton purchased slaves, I'll just say it the right way, for his own household, while anti-ethical to the popular image of the founding father, quote unquote. That reference has reinforced the view held by a growing cadre. Let's look up cadre. New words. Small group. A growing small group of historians that Hamilton did actively engage in enslaving people. I didn't expect to find what I did at all. Sir Philippi says, part of me wondered if I was even wasting my time because I thought other historians would have found this already. Some have said he owned slaves, but there was never any real proof, and she ran into the proof. His own receipts. Let's go to Micah 2:10, and it reads, Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted, it shall destroy you, even with a sore destruction. And this isn't our rest. We're going to get our rest in the kingdom. It says that in the book of 2nd Ezra. Paradise is open unto you, and rest is allowed. I want to say it's the 8th chapter. I'll just get it real quick. Let's just get it. 2nd Ezra 8. I think it's about 52. 2nd Ezra 8. Slakia. Might be 7. Yeah, it is. 2nd Ezra 8:52. And it reads, For unto you is paradise open. The elect, the remnant, and then the innumerable multitude, and then the rest of the Israelites after that. Because we're all going to get the kingdom. But certain of our people are going to have to die on this side to receive it. 2nd Ezra 8:52. For unto you is paradise open, the tree of life is planted, the time to come is prepared, plentiness is made ready, a city is builded, and rest is allowed. Yea, perfect goodness and wisdom. The root of evil is sealed up from you, and weakness and the moth is hid from you, and corruption is fled into hell to be forgotten. Woo! Corruption is fled into hell, to the grave, to destruction, to be forgotten. Because, after 1,000 years of Esau, being in the kingdom, the Lord's going to put the spirit on us to get rid of him. This is the $5 bill going into Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Stankin Lincoln. And the reason why is because, a lot of people think that he freed the slaves. Nah, that's not what happened. Let's go into it. So Abraham Lincoln, a new book revealed that Abraham Lincoln owned and sold slaves. So he was also a slave owner. Lincoln was always inspired the upper class, which meant owning slaves. He said explicitly that people who don't own slaves are nobody. And he married Mary Todd, the daughter of Kentucky's largest slaveholder. The daughter of Kentucky's largest slaveholder. Through that marriage, Lincoln came to own his slaves, whom he sold soon after his father-in-law's death. That much is obvious: the marriage, the inheritance, and the fact that Lincoln kept no slaves at their homes in Springfield or in Washington, but he did own them. Now let's go into Psalms 73:6. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain, violence covered them as a garment. That's how they got this land, through rape, robbery, and murder. And that's a prideful statement, Also a statement to show that Esau Edom, he was living high off the hog, man. And this man, was enjoying the fruits of the labor of the slaves, man. He was enjoying it, man. This is the statement he made. Lincoln always aspired to the upper class, which meant owning slaves. He said that people who don't have slaves are nobody. Therefore, pride compasseth them about as a chain, violence covered them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish, more than the mind could wish, because a part of them, ruling in this eon, in this age, is to have the fatness of the earth, Psalm 73:8. They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. Now, if you go into this word loftily in the Google, it means of imposing height, thick and resilient, basically to speak proudly, And if you go into this word in the Hebrew, it's marawasa. We got ma-ra-wa-sa, and it stems from the Hebrew word rawasa. As far as the etymology, let's go into the Strong's info. And it goes into height elevation of nobles, proudly. So they're speaking proudly. And that's exactly what he was doing. It says those who own slaves are nobody, Highest places, high places. Who exalt thyself is the eagle. The pride of thy heart has deceived you. Let's get that real quick. Let's get Obadiah. This is Obadiah 1:3. It says, the pride of thy heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? It's like it. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and thou settest thy nest amongst the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. And how does he do that? With his mentality, Space Force, satellites, setting his nest up in the heavens, man. Only to be cast down by Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahshai and speaking lawfully, proud. Now, if you go into this word, the root word, rawasa, in the Hebrew, we got ra, wa, sa. Yeah, ra, wa, and then sa. It goes into to rise up, be high, lofty, be exalted, to be high, to be set on high, raised, to be raised, uplifted, exalted, to exalt oneself, magnify oneself, and the future of that, to be rotten, be wormy. That's going to be his inheritance. Worms and dung. It says that in the book of Second Maccabees. Now, First Maccabees, the second chapter. Salakia. I'll just get it real quick. First Maccabees, second chapter. 2. It's been coming out a lot lately. Yep. First Maccabees 2:62. Fear not the words of a sinful man, for his glory shall be dung and worms. And this is what happened to Antiochus Epiphanes, man. He was worm rotten, man, within his insides, man. So bad, the stink was so bad, his men didn't want to come around him, man. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall be not found, because he is returned to the dust, and his thought is come to nothing, which is going to eventually happen to Esau Edom in his New World Order. Now, if you go into Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation, it happened January 1st, 1863, and a lot of people confuse this as the act that freed the slaves, quote unquote, which never really happened. They just used that in the form of the 13th Amendment to justify locking Jake up by slapping phony charges on Jake. And a lot of Jake ended up going back into captivity, as quote unquote captured indentured servants. Slavery all over again, man, under the guise of you committing a crime. And a lot of the reports that were raised were false. So the Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery. It captured the hearts and imaginations of millions of Americans and fundamentally transformed the character of the war. So the Emancipation Proclamation didn't end slavery, man. And he had a lot of slave rings still being busted, up into the 1900s, the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Underground, slave rings, man. You just had a slave ring be busted out there in Georgia, man, with the tribe of Zebulon and Issachar, We're still in slavery. You still got to pay tribute, go to work. To this day, To this day. Let's keep it going, though. So the 13th Amendment nearly preserved slavery. It did, actually, with Lincoln's support. And the 13th Amendment had a loophole. So the 13th Amendment, what was the loophole? Let's see. It's lucky. Yep. So neither slavery or involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any places subject to their jurisdiction. So a lot of times, basically a lot of Jake were, were quote unquote freed, quote unquote, with the 13th Amendment. But then they would just slap phony charges on Jake, snatch him up, have a crooked judge say, yeah, you did it, and then throw him back into slavery for, 10, 15, 20 years as an indentured servant, man, And that happened to a lot of Jake, a lot of our people, man. Now let's keep it going. Slack. Now let's go to Isaiah 42 and 22. Isaiah 42 and 22. If it doesn't pull up, I'll just read it out of the sword right here. So I got the sword in front of me, Salakia. Get the scriptures open. Isaiah 42 and 22. Doesn't want to pull up. I'll just get it right here. Salakia. Stay patient. Isaiah. Does it want to pull up? Isaiah 42 and 22. And it reads, one second. Un momento, por favor. Okay, cool. This is Isaiah 42 and 22. But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. And, you know, the 13th Amendment, the Emancipation Proclamation, was just a snare. A lot of Jakes got snared and thinking that they were going to be free just to be, you know, snatched up and thrown back into slavery. You know, that's Sirach, the 14th chapter. You know, if he do it good, he do it unwillingly. Sirach 14 and 7. And it reads, it also talks about him being a niggard at his own table, you know, in the book of Sirach, the 14th chapter. You know, Esau Edom being a nigger, man. That's Salakia. Now it just doesn't want to open up any precepts. Salakia, my phone, man. I got the sword. I'll get it out the sword. Yeah. Let me get the sword open. Slacky. I just get out the sword. You know, the scripture says, I believe, and if he do it good, he do it unwillingly, and at the last he would declare his wickedness. But I'll just get it out the sword. Un momento. 1 second. Sirach 14 and 7. Oh, wow. The water. This is Sirach 14 and 7. And if he do it good, he do it unwillingly. And at the last, he would declare his wickedness. And that's exactly what Esau Edom did with the 13th Amendment and the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, with Abraham Lincoln, it's not a known fact, a well-known fact, that he ordered the largest slaughter as far as massive, you know, execution, you know, in American history, you know. So Abraham Lincoln ordered executions following the Dakota War of 1862, where 38, you know, Native Americans were massively hung, man, you know, in Minnesota, you know. And 300 of them were originally, you know, ordered, you know, to hang. And then I read, allegedly, he pardoned 262 of them, you know. So it would have been even larger, you know. Let's go to Jeremiah 50 and 33. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahshai of hosts, the Lord of hosts. That word host goes into armies, you know, war, the Lord of war. The children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. And all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go, you know. And where this also happened, you know, ancient Egypt, you know, and in modern day Egypt, we're going to be free as far as the remnant, you know. But the children of Israel and the children of Judah haven't been oppressed together since ancient Egypt, you know. When the Assyrians took the northern kingdom into captivity, you know, it was separate from the southern kingdom. The Babylonian captivity, that was separate, you know. And then the Medo-Persian Empire, you know, by the time that happened, you know, the northern kingdom was already in the Americas, man. And then you go up to the time of the Greeks and the Romans. That was all separate, you know, as far as the southern kingdom being in captivity under the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and then the Romans. Let's go to Lamentations 4:17. As for us, the so-called Negro, Latino, Native American, West Indian, and Seminole Indian, and you so-called Haitians, as for us, the children of Israel, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. You know, still to this day, what happened? You know, what happens all the time, man? You see some, you know, random Jake getting gunned down by a modern day runaway slave patrol, a modern day, you know, Roman centurion, the police, which started off as the runaway slave patrol, you know. And a lot of those Jakes got framed by runaway slave patrol, you know, who were free. They were just, oh, you look like this such and such slave, man. Yeah, you're him. Yeah, back into captivity. Lamentations 4:18. They hunt our steps that we cannot go in our streets. That's, you know, what you see out there, you know, in the ghetto, the barrio, the reservation. They're constantly gunning Jake down, man. They hunt our steps that we cannot go in our streets. Our end is near, our days are fulfilled, and our end is come, as far as this captivity. Our persecutors are swifter than the eagles of the heaven. And what did the scripture say in the curses? I will send a nation from afar, as swift as the eagle flieth. We're going to get to that scripture in a second. And what was on the Spanish flags? The eagle. What was on the coins back in Greece and Rome? The eagle. You know, what's the Roman Empire referred to in the book of 2nd Ezra, the 11th chapter? The eagle. What's the national bird for Babylon the Great? America, the eagle. What do you see on the top of what do you see as the bird on the Mexican flag? You know, the tribe of Issachar, the eagle. Showing you who's in power. The Edomites, so-called white men, you know, starting with their elite banking families, you know, the Rockefellers, the Oppenheimers, the DuPonts, the Gettys, you know, so on and so forth. Our persecutors are swifter than the eagles of the heaven. They pursued us upon the mountains. They laid for us in the wilderness. You know, Esau, man. Now let's go into the $2 bill. The $2 bill, who's on the $2 bill? Thomas Jefferson. Now, a list of presidents who owned slaves. Let's get right to the point. 12 of the U.S. presidents owned slaves at some point in their lives. 8 owned slaves while in office. 10 of the first 12 American presidents were slave owners. The only ones, exceptions, being, you know, John Adams and John Quincy Adams, allegedly. George Washington, neither of whom approved of slavery, allegedly. George Washington was the first president who owned slaves, including while he was president. Zachary Taylor was the last who owned slaves during his presidency, and Ulysses S. Grant was the last president to have owned a slave at some point in his life. Of those presidents who were slave owners, Thomas Jefferson owned the most, with 600 plus slaves, followed closely by George Washington, who owned, you know, 316, like 325 slaves, man. And this man's on the $2 bill, you know. Let's get Isaiah 13 and 15. So we're following the money, just to show you that the people who are on your money, you know, are all slave owners, all devils, man. Every one that is found shall be thrust through, and every one that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. What does the book of Proverbs say? He that justifieth the wicked and condemneth the just, they both are an abomination to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. You know, everyone that's joined on to Esau, Edom, man, you're going to be thrust through. You know, it says that in the book of Proverbs. You know, they'll be thrust through. Actually, it says it right here. It's like it. Everyone that is found shall be thrust through. Isaiah 13 and 15. It's like it. And every one that is joined unto them shall fall by the sword. But it also says, Proverbs, I want to say it's 22 and 16. I think that's it. He that oppresseth the poor to increase his riches, and he that giveth to the rich, it might be 11 and 22. 11. That's a good precept as well. Oh, wow. I'll get it in the comments. It's lucky. Want to keep it going. This is Sirach 13 and 1. He that toucheth pitch shall be defiled therewith, and he that hath fellowship with a proud man shall be like unto him. And it reads, burden not thyself above thy power while thou livest, and have no fellowship but one that is mightier and richer than thyself. For how agreed the kettle with the earthen pot together? What agreement does the lion have with the lamb? You know, the lamb have with the wolf. Slakia. You know, what agreement does the lamb have with the wolf? It says that in the book of Sirach as well. You know, it might be 15. Let me see. I think it might be the same chapter. Yep. Sirach 13 and 17. What fellowship hath the wolf with the lamb, so the sinner with the godly? You know, there's the blasphemy right there. You just seen it on your screen. You know, they just had white Jeebus. It's lucky. White Jeebus, man. You know, Serapis Christos. You know, aka Jesus Christos. You know, Cesare Borgia. This is Ecclesiasticus 13 and 3. A rich man had done wrong. The rich man had done wrong, and yet he threateneth withal. The poor is wrong, that he must entreat also. I'm gonna read it again. The rich man had done wrong, and yet he threateneth withal. The poor is wrong, and he must entreat also. You know, because this isn't our kingdom. You know, and the poor is talking about the Israelites. You know, you can use the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. The rich man is referring to Esau, Edom, and the Lazarus is referring to the nation of Israel. You know, Slakia. This is the $20 bill. Let's get to the top devil himself, as far as that's on our money. So this is Andrew Jackson, who's on the $20 bill, you know. And Andrew Jackson was also known as the Indian killer, quote unquote. Let's go into a little bit of info about Andrew Jackson. I didn't even realize this, so I looked it up. Andrew Jackson murdered his ally, you know. So Andrew Jackson murdered, or basically, come on, man. Oh, wow. Now my article doesn't want to pull up. It's lucky. Speaking of violence, you know, somebody got blasted in Illinois. You know, another reason why you shouldn't be going out to celebrate this bullshit. It's lucky. Let's pull it up. I had this article. Yeah, right here. It's lucky. Come on. Yep. Come on. So Andrew Jackson murdered his Native American general. We're going to go into this. Things they don't teach you in history books. So this is an article that was published by, you know, a news source right here. I found this pretty interesting because It may be a blog, but found it pretty interesting. So we're just going to go through it. So this is posted November 29th, 2021. And it says, if the plantation owners of the South, Jackson's people, were to have the land they want, it's lucky, were to have the land they wanted to grow more cotton, the Choctaws had to move. If you, and this is, about Chief Pashuma, Peshmataha. So Chief Peshmataha was, one of the Indian generals who was an ally. He was an ally, of the American government. Let's just read about it. If you, Chief Pashtuma, were so against this move, you must be gone out of the way. From When a Ghost Talks, listened by Tim Tingle. So Pashuma, the Indian general, was one of the 3 regional chiefs of the major divisions of the Choctaw in the 19th century. Many historians considered him one of the greatest of all Choctaw chiefs. Pushmataha was highly regarded among Native Americans, Europeans, and white Americans for his skill and cunning in both war and diplomacy, rejecting the offers of alliance and reconquest preferred by the Tecumseh by Tecumseh. Pushmataha led the Choctaw to fight on the side of the United States in the War of 1812. He negotiated several treaties with the United States. And what does the scripture say about those treaties? Esau Edom, being the liar he is, he broke every single one of them. Let's go to Psalms. I want to say it's 50, 55. Yep. This is Psalms 55 and 20. And it reads, he had put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. He had broken his covenant. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were swifter than oil, yet were they drawn swords. And this is what happened to Gad, the so-called Native Americans, man. They broke every single treaty that they had with Gad. We're reading about one of them right now. In 1824, he traveled to Washington to petition the federal government against further successions of Choctaw land. He died in the capital city and was buried with full military honors in the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. And this is where their land was, Mississippi, Alabama, along that border, a map displaying the direction of removal from different tribes, including the Choctaw, the Cherokees, so on and so forth, Let's go into this. This is from When a Ghost Talks, listened by Tim Tingle. We invisible listeners, Slakia. Push Mataha, add his army, knew that Jackson's next words carried a quiet and venomous blade, a knife to the heart of who we are as Choctaws. One Pushmataha, Slakia, is gone. He said they would be hopeless. We'll destroy their towns and their homes, and they won't know what to do. This land will be ours. And do you have a plan to get rid of Pushmataha? Oh no, said Jackson. I would never do anything so heinous as to harm a fellow soldier, because these people, this specific tribe was a quote unquote ally. But look what happened. And we're going to read about other allies who were murdered by Andrew Jackson. you know, sell out, Uncle Tomahawks, man. We're going to keep it real, who shouldn't have never made an allegiance with this devil. I would never do anything so heinous as to harm a fellow soldier, but he has certain weaknesses about the food he eats. I have spoken to the chef about his diet. Pushmataha seems various allergies going into abominable dishes you're not supposed to be eating. Seafood, among others, after a dinner of shrimp one night in New Orleans, I watched almost die. So allegedly he was there. I watched almost die. So if he was there, I watched almost die, and he was speaking to the chef, most likely they were feeding him uncooked seafood, which you're not supposed to be eating anyway. But one of the ways you can catch, food poisoning is from uncooked shellfish, eating raw shrimp. What will happen if you eat raw shrimp? Shrimp and foodborne illnesses, the Food and Drug Administration says, due to the risk of food poisoning, raw shrimp are considered unsafe to eat, but they're also against the scriptures because they don't have fins or scales. Going back to the dietary law. Shrimp is a nutritious and popular shellfish, which is abominable. However, eating them raw is not recommended, as it may increase your risk of food poisoning. And this is what Andrew Jackson had the inside scoop on. It's been a little bit long of a day. He had the inside scoop on it, man. Let's go back to this. Seafood, among others, after a dinner of shrimp one night in New Orleans, I watched almost die. His face turned red, and he passed out and fell to the floor. Most likely of food poisoning, man. A brilliant plan, said Black Suit. No guns, no blood. A natural death. A diet of seafood, a little at a time, said Jackson. He will never make it out of Washington alive. And that's what happened to, this general right here. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 49. And it reads, it says, the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahshai, Slakia, shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth. And that was on the Spanish flags, that was that eagle, who those Spaniards first landed in, Hispaniola, which is the Dominican Republic, 1492. And who they run into? They ran to the tribe of Ephraim, over there. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Talking about the Spaniards, who were the first ones to get here, And what happened? After that, the Portuguese came, the French came, the English came, the Dutch, the French, Deuteronomy 28 and 50, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard persons of the old, nor show favor to the young. And that's what happened when Christopher Columbus got over here, And the hatred that Andrew Jackson and Christopher Columbus had for the Northern Kingdom is pretty similar, I wouldn't be surprised if they were the same spirit, the same person in the reincarnation, Now, if you go to Indian Removal Act, which Andrew Jackson was famous for, as well as the formation of the Democratic Party, the formation of the Democrats, man. The Indian Removal Act was signed into law on May 28, 1830 by President Andrew Jackson. The law authorized the president to negotiate with Southern Native American tribes for their removal. It wasn't negotiating, he was demanding. To federal authority west of the Mississippi in exchange for white settlement in their ancestral lands. The act was signed by Andrew Jackson, and it was strongly enforced under his administration, that of Martin Van Buren. Now let's go into Deuteronomy 19 and 14, because this is against the law. You know? Deuteronomy 19 and 14. Slakia. Now my phone's tripping. I'll get out the sword. The book of Deuteronomy, the 19th chapter and the 14th verse. And it reads, Thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, which they of the old time have set in thine inheritance, which thou shalt inherit in the land which the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahshua thy power giveth thee to possess it. So you're not supposed to remove landmarks. But what did this man do? Remove landmarks, shed the blood of the Israelites in their own land. You know, kill, rape, rob, murdered, coveted. You know, committed adultery, buck broke, everything under the sun, executed. You know, Deuteronomy 19 and 14. Thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, which they of old time have set in thine inheritance, which thou shalt inherit in the land that the Lord Yahweh of thy power giveth thee to possess it. Now let's go into more of Andrew Jackson's hideous acts. The Indian killer, Andrew Jackson, deserves top spot on list of worst U.S. presidents. Why? Well, it says, and unlike the statement, let me get right to the point. Andrew Jackson, a man nicknamed Indian Killer and Sharp Knife, surely deserved the top spot on a list of worst U.S. presidents. Andrew Jackson was a forceful proponent in the favor of the Indian Removal Act, according to PBS, public broadcasting. Others have a less genteel way of describing the seventh president of the United States. Andrew Jackson was a wealthy slave owner, an infamous Indian killer, gaining the nickname Sharp Knife from the Cherokee tribes. Armaguy on the website. He was also the founder of the Democratic Party, which I didn't even know. But the Democratic Party, if you look it up, just, come on. Democratic Party. Come on. Yep. Democratic Party is one of two major contemporary political parties in the United States. It was founded in 1828 by supporters of Andrew Jackson. So he was the founder of the Democratic Party. Let's keep it going. Demonstrating that genocide against indigenous people was a nonpartisan issue. His first effort at Indian fighting was waging a war against the Creeks. President Jefferson had appointed him to appropriate Creek and Cherokee lands in his brutal military campaign against Indians, the tribe of Gad. Also, he went to Florida to wage war against the tribe of Reuben, the Seminole Indians. And thousands upon thousands of our brothers died, man. President Jefferson had appointed him to appropriate Creek and Cherokee lands in his brutal military campaign against the tribe of Gad and the tribe of Reuben. Andrew Jackson recommended that troops systematically kill Indian women and children after massacres in order to complete the extermination. This guy had a brutal hatred, for the tribes, man. Particularly, Reuben and Gad. The Creeks lost 23 million acres of land in southern Georgia and central Alabama, paving the way for cotton plantation slavery. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, mostly Judah. His frontier warfare, as subsequent negotiations opened up much of the southeast U.S. to settler colonialism. You know, colonization, you know, taking, stealing. Once again, Deuteronomy 19:14, thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, which they of old time have set in thine inheritance, which thou shalt inherit in the land that the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahshua thy power giveth thee to possess it. And what did he do? The opposite of that. He removed landmarks, stole, raped, robbed, and murdered, man. You know. Let's go to the next paragraph. Andrew Jackson was not only a genocidal maniac of the indigenous peoples of the Southwest, he was also a racist against, we're not African, you know, we're Israelites, against the Southern Kingdom, and a scofflaw who violated nearly every standard of justice, according to historian Bertram Wyatt Brown. As a major general in 1818, Andrew Jackson invaded Spanish Florida, waging war against the Seminoles, you know, the Seminole Indians, the tribe of Reuben, chasing fugitive slaves who had escaped with the intent of returning them to their owners, and sparked the first Seminole War. During the conflict, Jackson captured 2 British men, Alexander George and Robert C. Ambrister, who were living among the Seminoles. The Seminoles, who resisted Jackson's invasion of their land. One of them had written about his support for the Seminoles, land and treaty rights, in letters found on a boat. Andrew Jackson used the evidence and accused the men of inciting the Seminoles to savage warfare, quote unquote, against the United States. He convened a special court-martial tribunal, then had the men executed. His actions were a study in flagrant disobedience, gross inequality, and premeditated ruthlessness, murder. He swept through Florida, crushed the Indians, executed those 2 men, and violated nearly every standard of justice. You know, in 1830, a year after he became president, Jackson signed a law which he had proposed, the Indian Removal Act, which legalized ethnic cleansing. Yeah, a lot of natives die, you know. Within 7 years, 46,000 indigenous people were removed from their homelands east of the Mississippi. Their removal gave 25 million acres of land to white settlement and to slavery. According to PBS, the area was home to the Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Seminole Indians. In the Trail of Tears alone, 4,000 Cherokees died, which is way, way, way undercutting the amount of Cherokees who died of cold, hunger, and disease on their way to the western lands. Because when I was reading about this, it says 46,000 people were relocated and only 10,000 survived. And that's lowballing the number, you know? This Esau being a liar. But tens upon tens of thousands of natives died, you know? Now, if you go into Andrew Jackson, some more information. He was a slaver, ethnic cleaner, and a tyrant. What did he also do? That's pretty much, you know, yep. Let's go to this part. This is pretty interesting. But Jackson, this article is different, but it says some of the same stuff, but it says something that's different right here. So let's read it. But Jackson is even worse than his horrifyingly brutal record with regard to Native Americans indicates. Indian Removal was not just a crime against humanity. It was a crime against humanity intended to abet another crime against humanity. By clearing the Cherokee from the American South, Jackson hoped to open up more land for cultivation by slave plantations. He owned hundreds of slaves, and in 1835 worked with his postmaster general to censor anti-slavery mailings from northern abolitionists. The historian Daniel Walker Howe writes that Jackson expressed the loathing for the the hatred for the abolitionists vehemently, both in public and in private. You know, so this guy was a complete tyrant, man, and he's on the face of the $20 bill. You know, what did he also do? He massacred Native American allies in 1818. And just, for the interest of time, if you read this article right here, and I'll leave a link, to these articles. So if any brother wants to do an individual lesson on any of this information, you can. I read this, and this happened to a group of natives, who were they were allies of the American government, and what happened was there was a group of Creek Indians, who wasn't having it, two tribes, and they killed some Edomites, man. And what happened? Esau, instead of going to, get back at the specific tribes, who got at them, they went to another tribe who was an ally and burnt down their village and killed 230 of them, man. Yep. Let's get this first paragraph right here. So in April 23rd, 1818, Captain Obed Wright of the Georgia militia ordered an attack on a Chehaw village, which resulted in the slaughter of several American Indians. In a letter written a week after the attack, Brigadier General Thomas Glasscock reported to his superior officer, then General Andrew Jackson. This is before he became president. Glasscock's account of the Chehaws affair is important not only for its description of how 230 militiamen killed 7 men, 1 woman, and 2 children, but they killed that whole village, Yep. Yep. Let's get one more piece of info on this tyrant right here. So Andrew Jackson, come on. And this is from Indians.com. Oh, come on. Yep. So he was not only a murderer, but he was a kidnapper as well. Come on. It's like in my reception where I'm at, it just is tripping. But let's go to this article right here. This is from Indians.com. So it says, I sent on a little Indian boy, a Gadite, Andrew Jackson's history of taking Indian children. So this is an article that came out June 17th, 2019. Add this to the genocidal legacy of Andrew Jackson. So we learned that this guy was the founder of the Democratic Party. He signed the Indian Removal Act, killed hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds, killed thousands upon thousands of natives, and was a tyrant, killed women, killed children, kidnapped children, A complete devil, man. And he's on the $20 bill. Add this to the genocidal legacy of Andrew Jackson, America's 7th president, taking Indian children from their communities. According to Quick Facts by the National Park Service, Jackson sent at least 3 Indian children to his home and plantation in present-day Tennessee, all hailed from the historic Creek Nation, the tribe forced out of its homelands by conflict with the United States and eventually by the Indian Removal Act. I sent on a little boy, Jackson wrote as a general after U.S. forces attacked a Creek village in what is known as the Battle of Tallushatchee. The Washington Post reported the boy's name was Lakoya, though in a Jackson biography, his name is written as Lakoyer. According to the National Park Services, he was found clinging to his dead mother's breasts after American forces overwhelmed the small Creek village, killing at least 186 Creek men and taking over 80 prisoners, including women and children. Yep. Lakoya only lived for another 15 years, meaning he was just a teen when he died, July 1st, 1828, at the Hermitage, the Jackson's family home near Nashville. The cause was tuberculosis, according to historians. So this man was a complete tyrant. You know, let's get a few more precepts and wrap on up. This is Numbers 35 and 33. So you shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed but by the blood of him that shed it. You know, it's like it. I'm gonna read it again. Disappeared off my screen. Numbers 35 and 33. This is in the law. So you shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed by the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. You know, Exodus 21 and 16 backs up that precept. You know, he that stealeth a man and selleth him, and if he be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. This is Hebrews 13 and 4, and 13 to 14. Hebrews 13 to 14. For here we have no continuing city, but we seek one to come. You know, arise and depart, but this is not your rest. You know, Micah 2 and 10. And that rest is coming, you know. 2 Peter 3 and 13. Nevertheless, according to his promise, look for new heavens and new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness, man. Wherein dwelleth righteousness. And that's what we're waiting for, you know. For our king to crack the sky and take this devil out of power. So that was all the information, you know, that I had. Lord's will, this is a informative lesson. Lord's will was edifying. It's like if it was on a little on the long-winded side, but Lord's will, you still were edified. I was edified, you know, putting it together. There's a lot of information that I didn't know that, you know, I learned, you know, putting this lesson together. So Lord's will, you were edified. And in closing, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and infinite glory unto the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachak Wadash. Give double honors unto the head apostles of Great Millstone, who do rule well and teach well with sound doctrine. Shalom unto the elders and the elder bishops of Great Millstone as well. Peace, love, salutations, and blessings unto the hopeful elect, the men, women, and children listening and learning from the servants of prophecy, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, and the hearty shalom to the sincere brethren doing the work of truth and sincerity, spread across the four winds of the earth, giving diligence to make their calling and election sure. Shalom, shalom. And last but not least, a hearty shalom to the men of valor and DTA camps. The first camps I ever heard the truth from, Isaiah 62, verses 6 through 7. Ye that make mention of the Lord, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, keep not silence, and give him no rest day or night. To Jerusalem is a praise in the earth. So once again, Lord's will, you were edified by this lesson. And until next time, next live stream, next live premiere, next live camp, Shalom, DTA, Wa Abba Baba. Soon. Shalom.